Welcome to Into the Grain podcast, where we slow down and talk about what matters. This episode was recorded at the Hope FN podcast studio and is sponsored by P39 Adventure Gear. Get all of your outdoor needs at p39adventuregear.com. I'm your host, Austin Hewlett. Joined with me, as always, is my dad and our co-host, Aaron Hewlett. On today's episode, we sit down with Brian Dickinson. Brian is a former U.S. Navy Aviation Rescue Swimmer. He's a mountaineer and a best-selling author of multiple books, including Blind Ascent. He's best known for summiting Mount Everest, which included a solo descent after becoming blind, snowblind to be specific, near the peak. He's got an incredible story. There's so many things he's gone through, from the Navy to mountaineering to becoming a teacher at one point. It's just incredible to unpack his journey, and the conversation was amazing to have. We even get into a bit of his childhood and some of the things that helped to shape Brian and his need and drive for adventure. It's an incredible podcast. It was great to sit down with him, and we really hope you enjoy it. All right, Brian, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us, hopping on, taking the time. You're all the way out in Washington, right?
Washington State. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good. Good connecting with you guys a few weeks ago. Had a good conversation, and yeah, excited to be on here.
Awesome. Yeah.
We're excited to have you.
We're excited to jump in. Dad and I, we were mentioning it earlier, read the book, did some research, listened to some podcasts, tons of interesting stuff to unpack. But for those that might not really be as familiar with your journey from being in the Navy to mountaineering, can you paint a little bit of a picture of what that kind of path looked like?
All right. Do you want watercolor, acrylic,
Oh,
oil?
I like this. You surprised me.
Okay. It seems to be watercolor because everything just blends together over time.
Sure.
So yeah, I grew up in Southern Oregon in the 80s. So back when there was no internet or anything. So just a simpler time, I think, back then. Just didn't have all the chaos. But yeah, small town, not much going on there. So I joined the military. So I was in from 93 to 99, the U.S. Navy. I was the Aviation Rescue Swimmer, Combat Search and Rescue, so part of Special Ops. 2 tours or deployments to the Persian Gulf, um, part of a helicopter squadron. So we went out with the USS Constellation aircraft carrier, did some fun stuff there, and then got out, moved up to the Pacific Northwest again because I was stationed down in San Diego, and earned my master's, worked in high tech, and just had a adventure gap in my life and decided to get into mountaineering, high altitude mountaineering. So climb the highest peaks on the 7 continents. And I'm guessing we're gonna talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great summary. It seems like you've probably worked on refining that. You've probably given that little pitch there.
First time.
Oh, first time? Okay, sure. With all your public speaking, I bet.
Yeah.
But yeah, so walk me through the Navy part. Obviously, that was kind of the beginning coming out of school. I know you had said that in some previous podcasts I'd listened to that you actually had some opportunities that were pulling you into college. I think it was art or sports related. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that ended up kind of pulling
Yeah, I
you
had
into the
some
college realm?
scholarship opportunities for soccer and art. Just a couple of my passions that I had and still do. Just now I'm older. Um, which I guess you're never too old for art, but soccer after a couple
Yeah.
blown
Yeah.
ACLs,
Yeah.
I had to pump the brakes because I'm
Yep.
not 18 anymore. So I decided to go in the Navy. My dad was in the Navy during Vietnam. My brother had been in for a short stint, my grandpa. So it's familiar to me. I never really considered going in until you get to that point, in your last few years of high school and think, oh gosh, I gotta go left or right here. And I didn't want to go right to college. I did that in later in life. Yeah, but I also didn't want to go in as just I don't know, a normal job, I guess. I'm wired a little bit differently. So went in and back then you didn't have the internet, so researching different jobs was a lot different than it is now. Now you can go on and they're making Lego movies about cool stuff. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, Top Gun had come out a few years prior, so that seemed interesting. That was like probably the best recruitment video that you could ever have. But like when Maverick and Goose ejected and the helicopter came in and jumped the swimmers. I'm like, oh, that looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, I could do that.
I could do that. So then, yeah, went in, decided to go that route, and it's a hard school. It's
Yeah.
one of the toughest. I mean, most people don't do well in those environments. Most people aren't great at swimming in general, but being a rescue swimmer, the attrition rate is extremely high because you are jumping out, of a helicopter in the middle of the ocean, trying to rescue someone who is essentially trying to kill you. They're panicked, they're in shock. They might be injured from an ejection or falling off a ship, or could be enemy, and you're risking your life to save another. And yeah, a lot of people don't work well in that environment, so they make
Yeah.
sure that you're ready to do it. You're not going to quit, try to look for the side of a pool out in the middle of the ocean
Yeah.
in whatever sea state you're in. So every day is harder than the last day.
Yeah.
Now, that training, I've read a little bit about it. Some of it's in your book, Blind Descent. You talk a little bit about it there. And the attrition rate you say is high. Like what percentage of people start it and don't finish it? Do you know roughly?
It changes, and it's changed over time. So when I went through, they had killed one of a student, Mareki, just a few years prior, so they had to revamp it because it had originally started with, like SEALs running it, and then, swimmers, and it was a mix. But it was hard. It's like, let's, they call it smurfing or whatever. Let's make you turn blue, and then we'll revive you.
Oh,
So
yes.
see
Mm,
how far you'll go. So there's life-saving techniques where you have to take people down underwater, get control of them. But attrition rates, I mean, it was 50, 60%.
Wow.
It's always hard to tell because you roll, if you fail out, unless you're DOR, drop on request, you get rolled to the next, um, like 2 weeks later, to the next training group that's going through. And so the original people that were in my class was really small. And even beyond that, you graduate that. I went to anti-submarine warfare school, which is all behind closed doors because it's all secret information. So we have a clearance. And then it's another like year of training in the helicopter, everything else. So you're not really actually doing your thing for about 2 years. You go through SEER school, POW camp school. Um, in my When I finally got my wings at the end of all that, there was two of us at the winging party. So,
two.
Really?
Wow.
so it was smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many
Now,
people started? I mean, of that.
It depends because in the 2 year period, people split off, they go different
right.
ways.
Oh, gotcha.
And
Yeah.
so in my rescue swimmer class, I'd say there's probably like, I don't know, anywhere from 20 to 30. And then the first few days it gets down. It's easier
Yeah.
to hide the first few days maybe. But there's a lot of instructors and they're on you, but there's weaker links. They
Yeah.
weed them out quickly, and then
Hmm.
the spotlight's on you, and you have to perform every day. I mean, it's life or death. I mean, you're risking your life to save another, and
Yeah.
if you forget why you're there, then you're probably there for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Was the rescue swimmer getting into the Navy and deciding you wanted to go that route? Was it always like rescue swimmer was at the top of the list, or did you stumble on that after like starting to get into the Navy, exploring options?
No, I'm grateful my dad actually pushed me that direction of going to the recruiter and getting a guaranteed at least opportunity. You still have to make it through. But that was some wisdom he gave me. So I went to the recruiter because they wanted me to just come on in and you can figure it out once you're in. And next thing you're scrubbing toilets and hating
Mm,
life, unless you love scrubbing toilets. I mean, it's necessary, and some people love that. I wouldn't have. So I said, no, I want this. And they're like, oh man, that's really difficult. Like, I don't, good.
Yeah. That's what I
It's a
want.
yeah.
challenge. Well, don't tell
Yeah.
me just because you couldn't make it. Like,
Right.
so I had to wait. It was probably like 7 months before I could go. And it was the February after I graduated, so the next year. So there was a lot of like just waiting and preparing. But yeah, I knew what I wanted going in, and I wanted to be a SEAL
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
My whole class did. We all went in. It was 93, so right after the first Gulf War. was winding down. So there's an upsizing, then a downsizing. So we were in that downsize. So I think at least 90% of my class took the CLN test after we graduated rescue swimmer school. And then they put everyone's orders on hold until they said like 4 or 5 years until you did
Oh,
your
wow.
tour. Some guys got through faster and actually became SEALs, and even some SEAL Team 6 that were in with me in my rescue swimmer group. But um, I don't know. After my first deployment and being in the Navy for a while, I knew it wasn't a career for me. So then
Mm.
I never pursued that. So I was satisfied with what I did. I was at peace.
Was there a specific moment that made you come to that conclusion, or was it just the compound day to day flow of it? You're like, this isn't long term for me.
It's that job is it's tragedy every day. You're dealing
Mm-hmm.
with just trauma. Someone's worst day is like our best day because we're saving lives and doing our thing. But it's you see a lot of things, you lose people, and I wasn't a big fan of deploying for 6 months at a time. And I'm more of a family person, and sometimes it takes being pulled away from that to realize. So
Mm.
I'd met my wife, my current wife, but we were dating back then, and I did one deployment while I was with her, and that was really difficult. So I think that was just kind of like, yeah, I don't want to do this forever, and
Mm-hmm.
did my time,
Yeah.
and now I'll serve in a different capacity.
Yeah, I'd heard you talk about a little bit about this previously on how the long stretches of being on a ship for it sounds like 6 months at a time was like the usual. How just that alone would drive you mentally insane. Can you unpack that a little bit of being isolated on a ship for that long and what
Yeah,
was so hard about it?
yeah, it's tough. It's because you like I was on an aircraft carrier. There's 5,000 and when I was in men because women weren't on that carrier yet. They were starting on some of the others. But you're gone. And I was leaving every day. I was flying. I'd
Mm,
fly into Kuwait and we'd shoot up tanks and do interesting things off the ship. I couldn't imagine like being on the ship. Like you pull in, maybe once a month, maybe twice, depending where you're at, for a couple days to just get off the ship, to have
yeah.
port call. But it's a lot, and some people love it. Um, I didn't. It's that isolation, and I don't know. I know they just recoined the phrase, but we'll call it a shy extrovert. And I'm until I get to know you and I trust you, I'll listen and learn and won't really put myself out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you are in that, before you become that extrovert, and it's in small sound bites, you're introverted. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for those type of people, being on a ship secluded with, all the personnel and everything and just constant ops, the tempo is crazy. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I have no regrets about it. It was
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I just didn't want to do that my whole life.
Yeah.
And then I end up climbing high peaks and going off, expeditions for 2 months at a time. So I'm not the smartest cookie, I guess. But
Yeah. That shy introverted side of you, is that something that you kind of saw shape over time from growing up, or do you think it was something within the household, the dynamics of where you grew up, the town, or anything that kind of shaped a little bit more of a reclusive side of you?
yeah, I mean, I grew up with like things weren't great, like all levels of abuse, in a small town. Um, so I was the youngest. I am the youngest of a brother and sister. So I think I learned from them, and I was just, you pick your battles, fight when you got to fight. But there's a lot of times where it's just, you don't take the bait,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easier and it depends because we all will have masks that we'll put on in certain scenarios. So in sports and different areas where I could perform, I was always doing the best I could. I was always, MVPs and doing good things, but it was all performance based, and that that can be unhealthy, when you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Hmm.
And it can take a lifetime to come to that realization.
No, that's well said.
Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, with that family dynamics, I'm always curious. I mean, you have such an incredible story, and there's so much where you've pushed through boundaries, limits from the Navy to mountaineering to being an author, a public speaker. There's all these things. So I'm always curious with someone that's so driven, what is underneath that? That's kind of that formulated the mind that constantly wants to push and exceed sort of these limits. So for me, I'm always curious, like, what does the upbringing look like? The family dynamics, you mentioned siblings. I've got an older brother and a younger sister. My family I was fortunate to have a really close knit family. I mean, I'm doing this podcast with my dad, so that kind of
Yeah,
speaks
that's
for
so cool.
itself. It's incredible, and I'm very lucky and fortunate to have that. And I think what's good about that is it obviously brings about a sense of like comfort and identity within the family unit. That's a safety net that's kind of always been there for me. And what I've found in researching a lot of individuals that are really highly driven, which I would put yourself in that category, is sometimes that is pushed from a sense of maybe fear or lack of identity or comfort that they didn't have as a child. So it pushed them to perform and to constantly be self-criticizing their worth because they didn't really have it as a kid, in the family, in the household. Does
Mhm.
that resonate at all with maybe your journey and your path growing up?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And as I've unpacked it over time, being an author, I do a lot of research. My second book was Calm in the Chaos, and we'll talk about my Everest expedition. But uh, the reason I wrote that is just because so many people well, one, the world is chaotic, and we are lacking that calm to get through it. People are panicking in all levels of life, and it's something I learned over my experiences of, walking it out, going through the hard times. And I've also realized, and people I've interviewed that are in special operations or even first responders, that a lot of us, like the majority, come from traumatic backgrounds. And then we find ourselves back in them. And that can be like an abusive relationship. You see that all the time. And it's just sad. It's like, man, why aren't you learning? Because you're comfortable. It's what you know, as sad as that is,
Yeah.
until you break that cycle. But for special ops, we're in these traumatic environments. We then seek them in order to have control and try to change the outcome. So it becomes, I don't know, this vicious cycle of chasing trauma.
Hmm.
And we are very effective at what we do. So it makes us really good operators, but it's super unhealthy over time.
Yeah.
And that's why we have so much depression and just, suicide rates. And we find our purpose in these things that are just, delivered to us without our control. We're the victims growing up, and now we're trying to help those other victims. So it's this weird balance, and yeah, it took me, I don't know, 40 some years to kind of figure that out and to be okay with not being okay and
Mm.
admitting that I had a problem. And that is the problem in the military, is no one feels comfortable admitting that, because you'll be labeled, and then
Yeah.
you may not be able to do your job, or you'll lose some sort of trust. So, I had friends cutting friends out of, that burnt up in a helicopter. They get back, you good? Yeah, I'm good. You? Yep.
Mm.
And you move on.
Yeah.
Get back in the air. Let's go fly. And it's the most traumatic things you can imagine, and things you can't unsee. And that's just how it is. And people, even once they get out of the military, like I have my own podcast, Calm in the Chaos, and I talk to just rescue swimmers, and it's the same thing. They can be out for 20 some years and they're still holding that, like they're still unwilling. They don't want to be labeled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you were talking about this, when it comes to like patterns, recognizing them, trauma, and how that's so prevalent within a lot of these roles in the military. I've heard you say you kind of realized at some point that you were chasing parts of your childhood, and maybe that comes back to these realizing the trauma and its relevance in how it's maybe pushed you in certain directions and how it's had a big control in some ways over your life. And those are my words, not yours. So tell me if I'm off there. But when did you realize, when did you like come to that realization? Was it anything specific while in the Navy that you're like, okay, wait a minute, this isn't normal, or the way that I'm reacting or navigating my emotions, or the way that I keep finding myself being pushed in this direction, and I'm now like reflecting on that, and I don't think that's healthy. Was there anything specific that triggered that thought, or?
Looking back, yeah. In the moment, no.
Mm,
Like I'd be out, someone, yeah, I've knocked a few people out, just in bars or concerts or stuff that, did something that they didn't deserve to be not, I mean, they deserved to be, they
Yeah.
weren't being good people, but so my reaction was probably too swift. But it's like, where did that come from?
mm,
It's these learned behaviors, from growing up. And so definitely like counseling and just having some self-awareness. But it wasn't until I got out, and for me, it's just this, I don't know, this perpetual drive. Like there's no end to it. It's like, okay, now what? Now what? Like I was always the youngest, I got out working at Space and Naval Warfare, got into technology, it was big in the late 90s, and now that's when it really was skyrocketing and continued. Um, but I was always like the young guy working with, at a peer level of people that are 20 years older than me. It was just like that guy, like just going after it, getting every certification, every degree, getting my MBA in technology management, being a manager at a young age, taught business ethics at the University of Phoenix for 5 years, so balancing all these things, and then had that adventure gap and decided to climb the highest peaks on the seven continents. So I'm just like, just
just
going, and
constantly going.
it's all that performance. So growing up, just dealing with, alcoholism, drugs, and neglect, you know, performance is what got attention.
Mm,
And it's just became wired in my DNA. So, and then you just, you never, if you're public, I mean, I guess everyone's public now, but never read the comments, the good or the bad, because the good are just as bad as the bad. Bad are just trolls, just being whatever. If
Yeah.
everyone's brave behind a keyboard, the good will just inflate your ego, and then
mm,
you're living this life that you're, thinking you're more than you are. And in the end, we're all human, we're all created equal by God. And, you have to have that humility and just come back to it. So that's my advice for people. And don't read the comments.
yeah, don't read the comments.
Yeah.
I've heard that
That's
many
well said
times.
too.
I mean, I do want to ask a little bit more, and feel free to turn this down. It's however deep you feel comfortable going. But I've heard you also talk about, and you've mentioned it a few times, about having somewhat of a traumatic upbringing, the dynamics in the household. Talking about how performance was like the way to sort of stand out within the family unit. Can you unpack that a little bit more of what those dynamics look like and what love looked like in the family and household? Getting brought up in that environment, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do it at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
Specifics are, people always want specifics of different things because of their own curiosity, and I don't think that's relevant. I think it distracts from the overall message,
Mm-hmm.
because we all go through stuff, and the specifics of what we go through is unique to us. But yeah, it was very conditional when you talk about love. My mom was, she was an alcoholic, but she was a victim in a lot of this. So she had more unconditional but love, but and she's the one who at least brought us kids to church at a young age, and but then that just kind of like phased out as we got older and could take care of ourselves, and so we're doing things and seeing things that, kids
Yeah.
shouldn't experience. So my escape was sports and art and my small community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's unfortunate that you had to go through that, but it's also it's a good message to see how what you've taken and what you've gone through from the research, the books I've read, and all this stuff, and just seeing all these things that you achieve. I didn't even know that you taught at what university did you teach at again? You mentioned it a moment ago.
University of Phoenix.
That's incredible. I didn't even know you did that. It's pushed you in so many ways, and the impact that that's had on so many individuals because of the pursuits that you've taken, which sounds like is in part as a result of some of these things that happened, has got to be far and wide. I mean, you're public speaking, you're teaching people, we're having this conversation here.
Yeah.
It's a massive influence, and I think that you probably feel this, and maybe have been told this, but I think that that is really important to highlight of all the good that's been brought out of it, and I'm sure there's a faith element that we could pull into that here as well. But
We'll get into that.
yeah, we'll get into that there. But so let's transition back to life in the Navy.
Well, no, I mean, thank you for that. I mean, and you're right. And I think hopefully anyone in my position would have a certain amount of imposter syndrome too, because when you grow up with that dynamic and now you're the one, you break the cycle, continually break the cycle because it's a part of how you're wired. So you have to be, constantly be reminded. But then when I'm on stage or, wherever I'm in the public and I'm doing my thing and I'm seeing the impact, it is amazing, but it doesn't seem real.
Mm.
Last year, my wife and I were traveling to different Christian colleges and giving talks, about my Everest experience. And then she's a Christian counselor. So she came on stage and, everyone wants to talk to her, the wife of, the crazy guy. But afterward, it's like just the vulnerability and sharing, what I've went through and, what she's gone through. And it's those conversations afterward, the one-on-ones. It's not the people just wanting to, get a signed book or whatever else. That's all cool, but it's the person that's reluctant to come forward because they haven't shared something, and then they finally do.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing we're praying and crying together, and it's it's heavy, and I don't by any means feel worthy, but I know I have to get beyond myself because I know God has created this environment for a reason, and there is more purpose than anything I'd put my own purpose into, earthly purpose, prior to some of these miracles that aligned in my life.
I mean, being around so much of that suffering, both from what you had to endure growing up, it sounds like, and then the elements of suffering that came with being in the Navy and being a rescue swimmer, and then you're also surrounded by, you talked about military individuals that have gone through traumatic events that you could kind of relate to a bit, and then now you're talking about people coming up to you after speaking events, pouring out their heart with some of the things that they've gone through. It sounds like you've been around suffering so much in so many different ways. Does that ever create doubt in your faith? Does it ever make you wonder or question things at all? Like, man, it feels like everywhere I look, there's suffering. Does that ever come into your mind?
I think I was going to say we're called, but I think we're human, and we're going to question. And I think God created or allowed that for a reason, because it strengthens our faith. Because if we just, blindly go everywhere and just drink whatever Kool-Aid,
Yeah.
is that truly us, or are we just lying?
Mm.
There's a lot that's happening in the world, and there's a lot that just I don't understand it, and I try not to question beyond just the initial, because I know that there's more purpose. I know that I'm here for a reason. So I don't know. I guess to answer your question, I'd say yes, but I don't let it consume me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I love what you're saying, because it's so easy to let it consume you. But it sounds like over the years, you've kind of figured out a path to kind of protect yourself from that a little bit. It sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
my best friend, one of my best friend's climbing buddies died last year. Well, like not even a year ago. But he was carrying a brain tumor for like 11 years, 12 years.
Wow.
And he's my climbing buddy. Like we were over in Russia together and just, we'd get out all the time and strong Christian. And it's just like, what? Like it makes zero sense.
yeah, yeah,
Zero
Hmm.
sense. You have, such, and that would be me judging,
yeah.
saying someone
Sure.
deserves it versus not.
Right,
Sure.
It's
right.
like comparing sin or something. But
Yeah,
I was on Marcus Luttrell's podcast last year, and his whole team got killed,
Mm-hmm.
and um, someone told him, and I love it. He's like, the good ones got taken,
Mm.
yeah.
so
I've
leave us
heard that.
bad ones behind. He's like, I can live with that.
Yeah, that's a good reframe. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well,
yeah.
let me shift a little bit now into mountaineering and how you got into that. It's an interesting story from what I've read and some of the research I've done. But can you unpack how you went from being in the Navy, getting into kind of like the normal civilian workforce, and then finding mountaineering as a path to sort of adventure down?
Yeah, there was this gap of adventure and really exercise. Like I went from like you have to be in incredible shape to be a rescue swimmer. Like it's insanity. And which is awesome to be in that level of fitness. But then you get out and I'm going to college and I'm working full time. I was working at Expedia when it was part of Microsoft and spun off, and just behind a desk and it's exciting, any new job, it's kind of that honeymoon of knowledge that you have. It's all new. And, I wasn't deploying to the Persian Gulf, which was cool. But yeah, I went bike riding. I think we had just had Emily, my daughter, and I just finished my MBA and I was going up a hill and I stopped and like was dry heaving. I'm like, what happened to
What
me?
happened? Where
Wait
am
a
I
It's
minute.
not
fitness
Yeah.
going?
cool. So I'm like, okay, no, I'm not
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So started getting fit, started climbing, did Mount Rainier, and just kicked it up. Decided to climb the highest peaks on the seven continents. It hadn't been done that many times at the time, um, and there's the mountains in Washington State are just amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's no shortage of adventure, but I'm that type that let's take this up a level.
Yeah.
So I took it up a level, came home and told my wife, Joanna, like, hey, I'm going to climb the seven summits. She's like, oh, great. What are those? So I
Yeah.
tell her, and she's like, wait,
Wait a
does
second.
that include Everest? I'm like, yeah, it's the highest peak in the world.
It's one on the list, baby.
Kind of an important one.
Yep.
I love the story in your book about in Blind Descent, that book about how you decided you wanted to climb the seven peaks. If I remember this right, weren't you at a friend's house and he just kind of casually mentioned it and you were just kind of like, I'm paraphrasing here, like, yeah, that sounds good, let's do it. Was it kind
Yep.
of, did it really play out that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're
Yeah,
like, yeah,
totally.
let's go. And then it turns out he ended up not being able to do it. Is that right? Didn't he have an injury or
Yeah, he was on his motorcycle at a track and like broke his back, almost died, had to be heloed out, like medevaced out. Um, yeah,
wow. Yeah.
so that was, if he didn't want to climb, he could have just said no.
Yeah.
He
Right.
didn't have to go race his motorcycle and,
Yeah,
do this
right. He had
big
too much
scene for
pride to
it.
say no. He had to put a whole event together to make sure that
Yeah,
was
that's
that
Yeah.
how
was
Adam
good.
is. So yeah,
Did he ever
it
end up
tracks.
recovering and doing any mountaineering, or was that injury too big of a setback?
He didn't do mountaineering, but he owns Gonzalez Racing, like he's a race car driver,
Oh, okay.
and
So he's still into
he and his
racing.
wife, yeah, they're
Yeah.
pretty extreme.
Yeah.
They're a fun couple.
Yeah. So
Cool.
so in your book too, you talked
Yeah.
about kind of preparing for Everest, and I've also heard you say too, you I don't know how strategic this was in lining up which mountains you had planned to cover out of the 7 peaks before you hit Everest. I know Everest was, I think, was number 4 on that list.
Hmm.
But you had a strategic plan getting to Everest. Is that right, in terms of what mountains and you tackle, or was that more just out of what opportunities made the most sense at the time?
Yeah, I don't know if there was, I mean, strategy wise, I think Denali is just a good first one to go to because it's closer and yeah, and that's an interesting one in itself. But it was, yeah, more opportunistic. I think I originally told Joanna I would do one a year and wasn't really thinking, oh yeah, northern, southern hemisphere. So, I could do two a year.
Yeah.
And then they quickly started coming in faster and it just made sense. So then at that point, it was like, okay, let's train hard. But each mountain is so unique, different parts of the world, and just totally different mountains. But I was also visiting orphanages and like trying to do something beyond myself as I went. And it was funny because I was like known as the orphanage climber for that stint of time. We go down
Yeah.
to climb Antarctica. I'm down in southern tip of Chile. Hey, orphanage dude. Like,
Yeah, right, right, right. That's the
That's neat.
label. Why
yep.
orphanages? What drew you to that?
Um, I don't know. It just seemed like when I researched, a need and to serve in these countries, and Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa was my second climb, and tons of orphanages there.
Mm.
And I brought two high school friends to climb Kili with me, and we went into the orphanages in these really shady areas, and it just after that it was, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Mm.
Yeah, you
So
could
it was
kind of
really
feel it
cool.
was your calling in a sense.
Was there any specific moment seeing those orphanages where you're like, "Whoa, okay, this is landing harder than maybe you thought going in"?
Yeah, and not just for me, but for the friends that I brought too, because I think it it may start as kind of an annoyance of like we're here, we want to do these things,
Mm-hmm.
it's like me type thing. And when you step aside from that, and now you're actually looking in the eyes of these underserved children that have nothing. I mean, the gifts that I brought, they're looking at the wrapper it came in as something they can use,
Oh
for
man,
carrying water and everything
wow.
else. I mean, there's just nothing. People are fearing going into these areas, and we're just cruising in, and it's what sucks if you guys have ever done like mission work, like we don't have to feel bad for how much we have and everything here. It's different places in the world, but the little that we do, it just seems so little,
Mm.
and you just want to do so much more. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
You talk
always more to do.
you talked about not feeling bad about what we have. I feel like most people wouldn't react that way. Why do you think that your reaction was to not feel necessarily guilty about, kind of like the freedom that we have over here versus what they have?
No, I do feel guilty. Like when I'm there, it's like we have so much. And I even brought my family. They're young. Um,
Oh, that's awesome. So you brought
yeah, how,
did you have kids at the time?
yeah.
Oh, so or of course you said family.
Yeah, I brought, and this was in Argentina. I think it was the first time I did an orphanage and with them. And we were looking at like, how can we bring one of these kids home? Like
Yeah.
and they have rules over there where you really can't. So it's probably good because we're like in the moment. But yes, why don't other people feel that way? I think we just live in a self-serving society, and the self-preservation. And I worked for this, or I'm amazing because I was born in a country that allows this stuff. Like you just happen to be born here, man. If you were born there, you'd be hosed. So I think a lot of it comes down to perspective. Man, if I was to come up with like one rule, like one law, it would be every person has to serve for you know, in a different country, but also in a country where people do not look like you.
Mm,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I love
Because
that.
you would get some perspective
Yeah,
yeah, it would, love God, love others. We talked about this on the pre-call. I mean,
Yeah.
that's if you
simple.
go any further beyond that, you've already lost. And so
Yep.
many people will say they love God, that's great. Do you love others? I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people can really say that.
Mm,
They may
Yeah.
think they do. They may love others that look like them.
Well, is it faith? Faith without works is dead. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
man, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, let me get to this. Let me get back to the peaks that you climbed leading up to Everest.
Fine.
I heard you talk about one. I heard you talk about one that was really interesting, and it involved. It might have been the third peak. I can't remember where it was at, but it involved like flying into Russia, and there was like it was really sketchy. And can you unpack that? What peak was that first off?
Yeah, Mount Everest is the highest peak in Europe, and it's in southern Russia, like near the Georgia border. So super sketch. We, so my friend that passed away this past year, he and his wife, me and my wife, flew to St. Petersburg, spent a few days there, took a train down to Moscow, a few days there, and then took an Aeroflot plane to Mineral Vodi, which is just it's wild. It's so corrupt, and things have even gotten worse with everything going on. I don't even know if you can climb over there right now.
I was gonna say. I wonder if you. That's probably all restricted now. I'd imagine.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we get on this plane. Well, even before that, like you're driving around Moscow and you just, one of the police or whatever will just wave you over. You just shake their hands with, a handful of rubles and then they
Yeah.
let you go.
Yeah, it's wild.
Otherwise, they'll pull you in. It's just super corrupt. And that happened the whole way there. The flight there, it was so cheap. It had like, the old like 80s linoleum wood stuff you had on the walls.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
It had that. As soon as they took off, all of our seats went back. They they didn't have bolts in the front.
Oh, no.
That is
It's like
just
it's
insane.
crazy saving money. Like they brought food around. It was on a paper plate with a little like whatever paper
Yeah.
towel or something over.
Yeah.
Like it's like okay, I'm not eating
Yeah, I
any
was
of
going to
that.
say, you didn't eat that. I
No
would have been a
way.
little sketched on
No
that.
way.
No. And then it's a drive to get to Azul, which is at the base of Elbrus, which is a ski resort. So you take a lift up to base camp. And I think that's at like 13,000 feet or something. The mountain itself is 18,500. Um, but it's super corrupt. They have competing lifts to where they've blown up the competing and killed people
Oh my goodness.
on it to
No
get
kidding.
their, get the customers or whatever. That
Yeah.
actually happened like shortly after we left.
Wow.
So it's like pretty wild. But not a highly technical mountain. Like you don't even have to rope up. I ran like the last part on the summit just to see if I could.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea. Did it, but yeah, I was up there trying to catch my breath.
Yeah,
Using
and pain
the
at
air
the
so
end.
thin up there,
Yeah.
just trying to prove something to myself. But yeah, got down and then got back home. But yeah, the even on the way up, we had to bribe the people that you'd go from one lift to the next. So you just shake their hand with some rubles, which is their money.
Yeah.
And they have these machine guns and stuff. And they're like these kids. Like it's not like you couldn't just take their gun and like hit them in the head with it. But
Right.
then
That
Yeah.
is
But
what now when you think about those types of trips and those journeys, I don't know if that's the only one out of all these peaks that you've climbed where there was corruption and kind of fear from like uh, everything that was happening in that area at the time. When you look at that and you compare it to like the fear of Everest and all that, which we'll unpack here, how do those compare? Those moments of like this peak or this climb maybe wasn't as challenging as Everest, but the fear of just going up or getting there, people holding guns, you're having to bribe people. Was that, how terrified were you?
oh, I wasn't terrified. Like I've been in those situations. It's a different dynamic. It's you most mountains you're training for it. It's a lifestyle of training. There's the logistics, there's just everything that goes into it. You tend not to worry about the the transportation, the getting there.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of shifted that focus. What was more difficult for me from a mindset is just my wife was with me.
yeah.
So
Oh, so
I
that
was
totally changes the
in
dynamics.
major like protective mode.
Sure.
And I had to leave. She's not a climber, so she stayed at 13 while I went up. And I was, in a rush to get back down because she was down staying at, the base camp. and you have lots of different climbers coming in and stuff. So I was more worried. And then once we got down, even going to like we walked into town and a car just pulls up full of guys and just asked in Russian if they could take the girls. And the whole time I had bought a pencil, like a big, thick, like 2-inch pencil, like made of
Mm-hmm.
wood type of thing, like from the mountains there. I was
Mhm.
bringing it back for my kids. Basically a weapon. I had it, and I was like looking at each person and seeing, how I was going to protect my family,
Yeah.
type of thing. And
Wow.
it's just a weird thing that like you're heightened, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay. Fortunately, we had a friend who's worked for North Face, and he was a guide, spoke Russian, and he told them, no, we're not interested, and
Yeah.
got beyond that.
He was able to kind of diffuse the situation.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but it's this just tense moments of just weird tense moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, we made it.
Yeah. We survived. Yeah.
We
Bit
Yeah.
of a
survived. We
coin
got back
toss
to
with
the
Yeah.
some of
kids.
those moments. It sounded like it could have gone one of two ways, but thankfully you made it out without any bruises or scratches, it sounds like.
Yep.
But
So I have a question. I want to kind of circle back a little bit to when we first started talking about mountaineering. And I know we're coming from the Midwest. We're in Michigan right now. So a lot of our listeners too they live in flat states. So can you just maybe explain a little bit when we talk about mountaineering so you can maybe tell the listeners and people viewing what exactly that is? Because, if you're coming from the Midwest, I'll be honest, you just, we walk up hills and to us, that's what we think of mountaineering, but it's on a different level than that. So can you maybe just tell us a little bit more about that, Brian?
Yeah. I was trying to think if there's something to compare it to, like ice fishing.
Like,
I
ice
guess we
yeah,
should
fishing.
like
use.
do you go for a couple days? Do you sleep in a tent on the mountain? Like, you have to carry
Yeah.
everything on your back. Like,
So with mountaineering, it's yeah, you're carrying everything. There's certain like Kilimanjaro and Everest, there's certain sections where you have porters that will carry loads because you're going to be there for some time. In fact, Kilimanjaro, you can't even do it without. Like that's how they kind of monopolize that game, which whatever.
yeah,
Good day. Don't have to
Yeah, right.
carry
have
my
to carry a
stuff.
bunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a typical, let's just say like Mount Rainier. So that's in my backyard here. It's 14,500 feet and highly climbed, because it's the most highly glaciated peak in the lower 48 in the US. Highest peak in the US is Denali up in Alaska. But people will come out, and it's usually a 2 to 3 day trip. And you start at 5,000 feet. It's a parking lot. First day you hike up, you're carrying all your gear. So it might be 40 pounds. If you're doing a larger mountain, it could be 70. Like on Denali, it's 60 to 70 in your pack and another maybe 50 in a sled that you're towing behind you, strapped to your
Wow.
harness. So you have all your gear because you're on glacier, and you really step on glacier realistically on Rainier at 10,000 feet. So that first night you camp there, and then you may go higher to do another camp, or you may go for the summit. But the deal with mountaineering is you have to acclimate because the air is so thin. So you just can't survive. So that's why, like airplanes, they pressurize the cabin because otherwise there wouldn't be enough air to survive. You'd pass out and die. That's why the oxygen drops. But by climbing high, sleeping low, um, you acclimate. And what that means is it forces your body into oxygen deprived areas, and then your body will produce more red blood cells, which carry oxygen, so you can survive higher. So it's a long process, especially on some of the like Himalayan, the larger peaks. But yeah, you're carrying everything in your pack, so you get really good at carrying a pack, because you could be on the side of an exposed hill, like 60 plus mile an hour winds, and you need to grab a snack or grab some water or something. The last thing you want to do is like empty your pack. So it's like you really plan ahead, for going to the bathroom too. Really try to plan ahead if you can because it's pretty challenging. But yeah, it's your tent, it's your sleeping bag, it's food, it's clothes, different layers, stoves, fuel, and then all of your harness, your crampons, which are the spikes you put on your boots, ropes because you're attached to other climbers, and you all have to have a similar skill set. So you do the training on the mountain if it's new people. Otherwise, for bigger peaks, people know what they're doing. They better know what they're doing. But like crevasse rescue, if someone pops through like a hidden crevasse, which definitely happens, going across snow bridges, things get weak, you punch through. Self-arrest if you start falling, because these are really steep peaks on ice and you accelerate really quickly. It's the ability to use your ice axe to drive into the snow while kicking your front points of your crampon in to stop an uncontrolled fall. So like if you're roped up, say there's five on a rope and you're spread out 30 feet apart, one person falls, they yell, falling, everyone drops, and you're all saving the life of that one person.
Gotcha. So you're all basically, you're creating an anchor, so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so if someone does go in a crevasse or anything, yeah, depending who is in the right position, we have different devices, pickets and ice screws and different things that you create an anchor system. So you pound that into the snow and ice, and then use different pulley systems, carabiners, to then try to get the person up
Up out of danger. Yeah. Wow.
out of danger.
That's pretty, when you hear about that, and if someone's never done anything like that, it's pretty extreme.
Oh, absolutely.
But for you, it's probably everyday life.
Just another day.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, and
Tuesday.
it's a great point. Every day. It's a great point because you're right. To anyone who's outside of that, and I'll say it like when I do my talk, I'll talk about just Everest in general. A few thousand people have summited Everest in ever. And there's been 100 million people to have ever existed on Earth. So when you look at those numbers, yeah, the majority of people would not understand it. They would think it's crazy, everything else. But then we all have something in our life that we know very well. Other people think is insane that you do that,
Yeah.
like extreme mountain biking and different things. It's like, well, no, I'm trained, highly trained at doing these things. I'm very comfortable. I take calculated risks. I'm not, just kamikaze doing like insane things here. And it's really hard for people to understand until you kind of put it in a way that they might get it. But in the end, I'm not here to please anyone else. I'm doing the best I can and just, being as safe as I can. And I'm wired differently, and I get that. I'll own it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being wired differently and the craziness of mountaineering, I know you've told the story about the descent coming down from Everest, becoming snowblind. Can you kind of unpack that and walk us through, especially for listeners that aren't familiar?
Well,
Yeah, of
should we
course.
get into the did you say coming down from the mountain? Let's
Yeah,
get into
maybe
going
I'm
up
getting,
first.
I'm
Because we
getting
talked a little
excited
bit
here.
about acclimating, and then how about like there's base camp? Can you just walk us through some of the the levels of getting up to and acclimating, getting up to Everest or to the peak?
Yeah, so I was there in 2011. So Everest, highest peak in the world, 29,035 feet, 8,000, whatever, 500 meters. So anything above 8,000 meters is considered the death zone, so 26,000 feet. What that means is there's only a third of the air, third of the ozone protection
And
at that area. That's why they call it the death zone. You just cannot survive long. If you cut your finger, it won't heal. So yeah, there's 14 8,000 meter peaks in the world. And that's kind of, some people just kind of go after that, and some people guide on them. But yeah, Everest it's a 2-month expedition, and right now it's happening. So April and May are really the only times of the year. There's a small window in the fall, but it's rarely done. But April and May are the times because it's so high up there. It's in its own jet stream, creates its own weather patterns, and it's right between like major weather. I forget what's the weather over there? Monsoon season.
okay.
Hold on one sec. I clear my throat. Let the dogs back in. My wife went to work.
There we go.
You guys doing good? Do you need anything?
No, I'm
No, I
good.
think we're good.
Yeah,
Austin, you need a bathroom break? I mean,
I'm sure I'm going to need to before
he's
this
got like a
podcast
little
is
peanut
over.
bladder over here. So,
Oh, poor
I
guy.
blame my grandma, which is his mom.
Okay. Well, I just
yeah,
went. So
yeah,
diapers getting all
I was just
soggy.
gonna
yeah,
say
yeah. Forgot
diapers
about the
coming in
diapers.
handy. I know. For a second, I was like, "Wait, he just went? Is he admitting to wetting
Yeah,
himself here?"
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'll
let's keep
pick up.
talking about this Mount Everest stuff. Moving up is, I think it's so cool. The way
Yep.
you go from camp to camp, but maybe you can break it down a little more.
Yep. So I flew into, well, from Seattle, go to like Taiwan to Bangkok, spend a night there, then into to Nepal, so Kathmandu, and then spent a couple days there and got the team together, and then we flew up, small plane, uh, propeller plane, up to Lukla, which is up in the Himalayas. It's the one of the highest and most dangerous short airport. Like it's you don't even see it until you're on it. You're going towards it, and then there's like this little strip, and you either land or you don't. And and then you get off, and it's all on foot for 38 miles to get to base camp. So it takes, a week and a half, whatever, just to get there because you're acclimating the whole time.
Yeah,
But amazing because in these villages is where you're really immersed with Sherpa. So Sherpa are the locals that live up there in Tibet and Nepal. Just amazing, amazing people. Just just very basic, but just loving and just, they get it. So definitely, I don't always recommend like climbing Everest, but like just go to Nepal and just immerse yourself with Sherpa.
Yeah.
It'll change your world. But yeah, after a week and a half, get into um, Everest Base Camp, which is at 17,500 feet. So if you think about that, like what I mentioned earlier, Rainier is at 14,500. So this is
hmm
3,000 feet higher than the highest peak in the lower 48.
yeah.
That's
Just
just base camp.
yeah. That's what I was thinking. That's base
Yeah,
camp.
that's just the
So
start.
yeah,
Yeah. So I went and I actually got sick getting in there. Like a famous Lama did like a Buddhist worship thing, and he was coughing, and I was holding my breath the whole time. And I'm a Christian. I'm not Buddhist, but I was respectful for what they were doing and everything. It was neat to see all that. And but he got me sick. So I was at base camp and just I didn't know if I had some sort of cerebral edema or something. Like my forehead at that altitude was just like expanding. And the next day I hiked like 15 miles back down to another village, hung out there, and fortunately rallied and was good. And then the following day went up and climbed a 20,000-foot peak to acclimate. It's a little safer peak called Island Peak. It's pretty sketch, but it's pretty typical. You go out and do, instead of like doing some of the more dangerous stuff just to get your body ready, do that. And then eventually made it back to base camp. So out of base camp is the Khumbu Icefall. So that's arguably the most dangerous area on the mountain, besides like up higher just with the altitude, the elevation and everything. But the Khumbu Icefall is a couple miles it's a river of flowing ice, basically. These building size blocks of ice called seracs that are just falling constantly. So on highly glaciated peaks, you climb through the night because once the sun comes out, things become very unstable. So all your devices are made for like bulletproof ice, your crampons, the spikes on your boots, ice axe, like whatever devices you're using, even the anchors, because um, they're usually aluminum or some form of metal, which is a conductor of heat. So once the sun comes up, it can loosen it up and everything. But then at
Oh,
night, it
okay.
freezes solid again. So you go through the night, headlamp. On Everest, it's unique in that I don't have to rope up to somebody else. I rope up to the mountain. So we have fixed lines. So we have rope that we attach to different anchor points, and going across like different crevasses and different obstacles. We have ladders, those cheap aluminum ladders. At some places, like five of them tied together, and you can't even see the bottom of the crevasse. And cross that by yourself, attached to a rope. So if you fall, hopefully you don't, fall and die, but people definitely do. In fact, when I was there in 2011, two climbers that had fallen in one of these big crevasses actually churned up a few miles down out of base camp, and it was like 20 years later.
Their bodies
Wow.
finally eventually washed to
Yeah, they
them, if you want
popped
to call it
out.
that. Wow.
I guess you get some closure from that. But yeah, that's how glaciers roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally, they're just churning slowly, slowly, just um, s- kind of scalpeling the earth, making it beautiful. Hopefully the glaciers stick around long enough so we don't see what that earth looks like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, lots of up and downs. I because I'm acclimating, I ended up going through the ice fall, I think 8 times, all said and done, because you go up, touch a camp, come back down, sleep, let your body produce the red blood cells. So above camp, or above base camp, above the Khumbu Ice Falls, Camp 1 at like 19,000 feet. And I was up there alone on Easter Sunday in 2011. It was pretty surreal. Still wasn't fully acclimated, so it's hard to breathe. I was completely alone and took some pictures, read a card from my wife and the kids, which I don't know, good or bad. It's like
Yeah.
motivating, but at the same time it's sad and it's
Oh
hard to
yeah. I
cry
can imagine.
at altitude. So I went in my tent and I had a little mini laptop and watched The Empire Strikes Back.
Great
Okay.
movie.
There you
Good
go.
choice.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Um, so out of there, you go through the Western Cwm. So it's this huge valley, and it's safe for the most part, but there's a five ladder tied together at one point, and there's a couple crevasses, but for the most part, you can be off rope in different sections. It's this big valley, but you have avalanches kicking off left and right of you, and it's pretty surreal, like just kind of cruising through there, and every step just takes like 5 seconds between because you just don't have enough air. Your body's just screaming for like oxygen and energy.
Yeah. And,
Um,
and, and you're loaded with gear and,
yeah,
I'm just trying to paint the picture for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not only loaded with gear when it's that cold, you have, you're wearing multiple layers, probably real heavy outer layers.
hmm
So not only do you need the oxygen, you would need oxygen in a major
Yeah.
capacity on flatland
Yeah.
at sea level for that, let alone
yeah,
being 17, 20, 25,000 feet above.
yeah. And we're carrying those bottles at that point. We don't use them until higher. So
Yeah. Where
talking now, we're talking supplemental oxygen, but yeah, just normal air, and now it's like half of what it is at sea level. So yeah, it's a lot of work. So just it's nothing you can do. So you just take it slow. I would take a step, and just because so much boredom, anyone that does a marathon or anything knows that you like get in your own head and
Mm.
it's super boring. But I don't know, you're drawn to it. You just continue doing
Yeah.
it. But I would just recite my family's name. I'd say Emily, Jordan, Joanna, Step,
Yeah.
Emily, Jordan, Joanna, Step.
Mm.
And that was kind of like my 5 second rhythm. And I would just one step in front of the other, and eventually you get there. So I got to Advanced Base Camp, which is Camp 2, which is at 21,000 feet. And that's kind of like we had a cooking tent. We're sharing with like other groups and everything. Um, and from there, it's at the base of Lhotse. So I'm not going to go like back down to base camp. I'm just going to bring you up. Just assume
Sure.
that we're going back and forth. Lhotse is a straight up rock and ice climb, and Lhotse is the fourth highest mountain in the world. And you actually climb up Lhotse just straight up. Look at your wall and think of climbing up that to get to the highest camp in the world. And halfway up that is where you camp. So that's where you see the tents that are, tied in and anchored to the side and like
Right.
shelves cut out. So that's pretty amazing up there. But you should never come off rope or the fixed lines because people have come off. If you fall, you accelerate, it's game over. You're not going to
Yeah.
stop.
Right. Right.
People have definitely done that. And this is where you start using supplemental oxygen. So this is at 23,000 feet. And it's these 15-pound bottles. So they're heavy. but it mixes with the outside air. So it's not like scuba diving, because if you came off of that, you would pass out and die. So it just mixes with the outside air. So you have a regulator and everything.
Okay.
Um, yeah. From there, keep heading up, go across the Yellow Band and Geneva Spur, which are like major landmarks. And then it's this saddle between Lhotse, where you could take a right and climb Lhotse to the summit, or to the left, which is Everest. I went left. And so that's kind of how it works. And then you make a summit attempt. Do you want me to go back now and talk about my experience and the goggles and everything? Just kind of,
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit
Yeah.
because this is all fresh in my mind. Because again, I just listened to the audiobook again on your book, Blind Descent, and I have a lot of notes and I have a lot of questions. But you're hitting them as we go. So let's talk about that. I mean, obviously, at the time when you had a goggle malfunction, I'm gonna call it that. You'll probably rephrase that, but did you know, like, oh, this could be real serious? Like right now, did you know you were in trouble? What that could lead to, or what? Walk us through that. Where were you at mentally?
yeah, well, let's talk about how it occurred. So I went up, it was my summit push, we'll call it, because it's
Okay.
not a summit day. It's multiple days to get to the summit and down. But this would have been May 14th, 2011. And Pasong is my Sherpa friend. We were climbing together. And it was just the two of us leaving Camp 3 and heading up. There were 70-mile-an-hour winds that night. A famous Japanese climber died on the south summit. A couple people did summit, which would have been miserable. And then most people came back down. So we were the only two heading up, and which is very unusual. But the weather was calming down, so we were just kind of a day ahead. Most people were like a day behind and a few days behind. Because there's only a few days that you can actually summit on Everest, so you're triangulating weather, everything else. So we're heading up, and it just seemed like every step forward, it was like two back, just slowly pushing through. I got about 1,000 feet above Camp 3, and I anchored off to, and again, look at your wall, think of being anchored off to that, to get some water. And I took my goggles off, put it around my arm, and then took my oxygen mask off. And at that point, my foot slipped out. And I remember grabbing, even though I was anchored off, it's a natural reaction to try to grab the rope, and my goggles just like came off my arm and just they're gone. And I watched them go down, and I'm thinking, oh, that's not good.
Oh,
And about 500 feet below me, some Sherpa that were going up to a higher Camp 3 were waving at me. So I'm like looking straight down and wave at them, and they were like motioning that they had the goggles. I was like, oh my gosh. So typically you don't bring extra goggles.
Yeah.
I'll wear sunglasses most of the time, but with a oxygen mask, it has this line that then puts the glasses, just makes them to where they really don't protect. So I had to wear goggles. So I took off my pack, came off oxygen, rappelled down, got to where they had tied up the goggles, and saw that they were cracked. So goggles have an internal and an external lens. The internal lens was cracked. So they were freezing between layers. So anyone who goes out in the cold or has glasses, you go outside and you know that your warm breath and the contrast of the cold outside, they'll fog up. Well, mine were literally freezing between layers. So nothing I can do. I put them on and just, slowly made my way back up. I eventually ripped the internal lens out,
Mm-hmm.
and not realizing that probably cut their effectiveness in half. And I have blue eyes, so more susceptible. Made it up to 26,000 feet. Eventually, highest camp in the world. I mean, the other highest camp is on the north side out of Tibet. And found Pasong, and we just kind of relaxed, if you want to call it that, in the tent. Made our radio calls to triangulate the weather. And at that point, the wind was whipping off the top. And within the next hour, it was just calm as could be, as predicted. So that's kind of how the weather works on Everest. is, through the night it might be calm and then higher winds and stuff will happen the next day. So it was a good weather window to go. So we made our decision. We're gonna go for the summit. And what we didn't realize at the time is we're the only two people going from either side. So you can summit from the north out of Tibet or the south in Nepal, which is very unusual. Um, it just doesn't really happen. We didn't know that. So we just, once the sun went down, we started heading up, had our headlamps, just slowly moving up the mountain. And Pasong he's a strong dude. He's had a couple summits already, young guy, um, and many since. But he was just slowing, inching back, and I was inching forward. And we knew that we had a rendezvous point at 27,500 feet. Um, if you've read Into Thin Air, there's a lot of stuff that's happened at that area. And I waited there for about an hour. I could see his headlamp, so he's coming, but he's just super slow. Once he got there, I'm like, "Hey man, you all right?" And he's like, "No, feel good." And like I ran out of water, so I gave him some water, and he vomited. I'm like, "Do we need to go down?" He's like, "No, no, no. I need something to eat." So he got a snack. He's like, "Okay, we're good. Let's go." So it's tough, but you live and die by the decisions you make.
Yeah.
And in the mountains and in a lot of things in life, you have the information that you have. So within a 3 foot reach. So I don't ever question like when other people, there's stuff happens. If I'm not there, I don't know because I have been there. I've been in situations and I know that you don't have all the information.
Yeah.
So when you're there, no decision is the worst decision.
Mm.
Can tell you that much. So we go and he's doing all right until we get to the base of this technical section, the South Rock Step at 28,000 feet, and that's when he says, "I'm done. In fact, he's like, I'm going to go back to the balcony, so it's pretty close to where we're at, and wait." He's like, "I'll leave you extra oxygen." So at that point, I had to make a choice, and I'm weighing out everything.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Oh yeah.
So it's, how am I doing? I felt strong. How's the weather? Weather was really good. Most importantly, how was Pasong? And
Yeah.
he assured me he was good. In fact, he dropped an oxygen tank and just started walking down. He made his choice, and without overthinking it, I just continued up. So the South Rock Step is like down at sea level, it's not like insane, like it's scrambling on rock.
Hmm.
At 28,000 feet, well into the death zone, it's a lot. It's I have a Jumar or an ascender, which is a device that attaches to the rope. It has backwards teeth in it, and it's attached to my harness. So I put it up the rope, I lunge up, and it's kind of you're just inchworming up and placing my crampon like one spike in a crack in the rock. So, it's a lot of work and all the gear, everything you're carrying, full down suit, oxygen, mask, you can't really see anything, especially me. And eventually get close to the top, and that's where I look out to my left. And one of the most amazing, video, I have the video, but just amazing moments I will probably ever experience on Earth is the sun was rising from the highest point in the world, casting that perfect pyramid shadow, if I said that right, from the highest point in the world down on the Himalayas. So I'm anchored off. The sun is just casting this amazing shadow down on the highest peaks in the world, and they're all below me.
Oh,
And I
that's
just took
Yeah,
crazy.
that
that's got to be
in.
amazing.
It is, and mountaineers will know that the sun is a major motivator. It's your first, symbol of hope. It's that light
Yeah.
because you are climbing through the night with a headlamp. It's one small step in front of the other. When that sun comes up, if you've timed it right, you should be close. And it's warmth and it's everything else.
Right.
And later on, the dangers it can bring. So just a motivator. Put my stuff, my camera away. Actually, it froze solid. So I had to thaw it out and get that footage later. So I was fortunate. Got up to the south summit, which sucks because you actually have to drop down off of that. So you know you're gonna have to climb it on the way back out.
Yeah.
And the section between that and Hillary Step, which is a 40-foot rock climb, is called the Cornice Traverse. And it is literally a maybe a foot to 2 feet wide. On each side of you, it is a 2 mile drop. So on
No
the
Wow.
kidding.
right, a 2 mile drop into Tibet, on the left into Nepal. So winds were starting to kick up a little bit. Just slowly, you take a step, anchored in, got the rope, take another step, eventually get across that. And people have fallen off of that. It'd actually be kind of a cool way to go. I don't know how long
Two
you'd
miles.
last.
I mean, yeah, you're just falling straight for 2 miles, right?
Yeah, I feel like
Wow.
you'd hit the
That's
afterlife pretty before you hit. But
wow, that's
I don't know.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
I
man.
don't know.
So say it again. How wide is this section? The hill is it called the Hillary Step?
No, it's the Cornice Traverse.
Oh,
It
Cornice
leads up to the
Traverse.
Hillary Step.
Okay, that's the section that's real super narrow.
Yeah. It's like a couple feet wide.
Man, that's crazy. I can't even imagine what this would
Oh
look
my
like.
goodness, I can't either. Yeah,
Wow.
that's what I'm trying to picture right now. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. You guys can keep going though, but I'll be right back.
All right.
We
Well,
can
we're
wait
gonna
for you.
wait. We won't. We can't record without you. So we'll
Okay,
wait.
okay,
Yeah.
hold up here.
I'll hit the
I-
bathroom too.
All right. Told you he's got that peanut bladder, Ost. Well, you're connected. You're connected, Ost. There's something in there. The only thing I'm noticing, Justin, after we started, is Brian's hat is casting it like a mask on his face. But I didn't really think about it until after we got started.
Yeah, I noticed it a little bit in, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Is there a way to lighten that up or no?
no.
Okay.
I feel weird saying, "Hey, can you move your hat?"
Yeah, I didn't even think about it till we got going, but then,
Some
you
people
know,
just-
yeah. Even if it lifts it up a little bit, that might help a little bit. I mean, we're, 2/3 of the way done now, or 3/4, so.
yeah. At this point, no. Yeah, I never want to tell people how they have to style themselves or anything like that. Plus, we're not sending them lighting setups or anything. So
Yeah. Yep.
maybe that's just something to include in the whatever paragraph we send them before.
Yeah, or the,
Make
yep.
sure you got some clean,
Yeah.
something like that.
Good to go, Brian?
Good to go.
All right.
Drop them a little bit. Yeah, just in my. Yeah. I don't think let me just do yours.
I told you Austin had that peanut bladder.
I knew it was gonna come in. This might be I think this is the first time though out of all the episodes we've done where I've ever had to stop. I usually time it out pretty nice, but this one caught up to me here.
Yeah, well, me too.
All my headphones here.
Once you're ready, Austin, we'll get going. We'll have to remember where we were. Oh, yeah, the Cornice Traverse. Am I saying it right?
Yep.
All right.
All right, I'm back. We're back in action.
All right. So yeah, the Cornice Traverse. So a cornice is actually an overhang of windswept ice and snow. So when you have a peak, the wind usually comes from one way, and it's blowing that snow and it's just freezing. So that's why it's a Cornice Traverse. So in any outdoor adventure, if you see a cornice, avoid it because they do break loose. And yeah, so this one is pretty solid. You don't go too far to the right as you're approaching Hillary Step. I know there was, I don't know if it's a Sherpa, someone did punch through and actually fall years ago. I think maybe it was since I had climbed there. So yeah, so it has been done. So once you get past that, the last major obstacle is Hillary Step. And I know this has changed since the big earthquake that hit a few years back. Um, I don't even know if Hillary Step is totally there anymore, but it's this 40-foot rock climb. And what's interesting is you see on like the news, you see these lines of people on Everest. It's because there's only one way up, one way down. And Hillary Step is definitely one of those points of contention because it's a rock climb and you're either going up or rappelling down. I was completely alone. I mean, just such a unique experience. So I bounced over that, and at the top, you can finally see the true summit. So it's still quite a ways away, but I could visually see it. And just you're just drawing Emily, Jordan, Joanna,
Yeah, each
step, like
step. Yeah.
trying so hard to get there. And it was just amazing because it's like it's the size of a kitchen table, like the actual summit itself, it's just like anything. And it's just plastered with prayer flags, and they had some like bags full of like extra like rope and gear and stuff there. But just those last few steps, were just it's so hard to process in the moment. Like I think it doesn't have to be Everest, but I think a lot of us have those moments in life, things we work so hard to accomplish. It could be a degree, it could be, having kids, marriage, or whatever. It's like in that moment, you're trying to like you're almost forcing yourself to try to process it. And up there where there's only a third of the air in the death zone, top of the world is impossible and just overwhelming. Um, but I was also alone. So I know in the Himalayan database at the time, I think there was like two people that have ever had it completely to themselves. Um, there's probably more back in the day before like the Himalayan database was really capturing a lot, but I don't know what those experiences were like. No one was above the death zone,
Mm.
and that was my unique experience. So the first thing I did is made a radio call just to connect with other humans
Yeah.
and I had to practice a few times because I was like so emotional.
Yeah.
But I just say, hey, this is Brian checking in from the summit of Everest. And just everyone monitoring those frequencies from base camp up just came on, just congratulations, just
Yeah.
super excited. A guy that I had been climbing with was a day behind. He was at Camp 3. He came on and we were sharing all of our resources. He's like, congratulations. Um, you and Pasong, be careful coming down. And it was at that moment I realized no one knew I was alone. So I was just
Yeah.
like, that's cool. But Pasong went down over an hour ago. He's like, what? You're alone? So yeah, he's like, oh man, oh, be careful. So all right,
Yeah.
great advice.
Li-
He
li-
turned to Lakba Sherpa, who he had 5 summits already, super strong. I'd been climbing with
Wow.
him, and asked him, over years, you do like they're guiding every year, so a lot of times it's repeat Sherpa and guides. He asked Lakba like, how long is it going to take Brian to get down to high camp? He said, Brian, probably 2, 3 hours, and then no one would hear from me for 7.
Wow.
Yeah. They probably thought, I'm sure they thought the worst after 7 hours. They're thinking, because I know in your book you talk about multiple times about how the Sherpas commented about your level of fitness and how strong of a climber you
Mm-hmm.
were. You were certainly prepared for this. And for them to not see you in 7 hours, they knew
Right.
something was wrong. So maybe you can start to tell us a little bit of what happened. Obviously, we talked about the broken goggles earlier. So what did it lead to?
Yeah. So yeah, you don't have a lot of time to spend. You can spend, a month and a half getting there, but that's halfway. You got to get down. And even though it's all gravity on the way down, it's most accidents occur on the way down. Like you're
No kidding.
exhausted, climbing all through the night, you stumble, you just get sloppy. The sun comes out, things become very unstable. So, and I know all that. So I've took my last pictures, got a snack, got some water. Like I got to go. I start walking and I don't know, maybe like 10 feet or so into it, everything just went completely white
Just that
and
fast.
immediate,
Just no
immediate.
warning, just you were basically blind. 10
Yeah.
feet, 10 steps off the top of Mount Everest.
Yep. So completely, yeah, with snow blindness, it's immediate. Like it can accumulate from days prior. Once it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
And usually it takes about 24 hours to return. I wouldn't regain my eyesight for about a month and a half.
Goodness.
Man.
But I remember when it happened, I remember just dropping down, grabbing the rope I was attached to, and assessing the situation. That's what I did. It's what we learned in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I'm blind. I'm alone. No one's coming to get me. I'm at the highest point in the world. And without overthinking it, I remember I just stood up and started moving, using both hands on that rope, just guiding me, trying not to trip over myself with my crampons, and trying so hard to use my eyes. I'm not usually blind. So snow blindness, it's not like blind where everything's black. It's bright, bright white. You cannot focus on anything. It's like I always equate it to if you have a light bulb like an inch from your face, super bright. You can put your finger between your eyes and the light bulb. You'll know something just moved, but you cannot focus on it.
Yeah.
And very painful. It's just like break potato chips, put them in your eyelids.
Ugh,
Yeah, I don't
man.
recommend it. Um, but yeah, I just, with the goggle malfunction, having blue eyes, being in the death zone, just that exposure, as soon as the sun banked off the ice, it fried my cornea. So I kept moving, and it was just super slow. And I realized my other senses were heightened, specifically sound, touch, and I have like big gloves on and everything. So I was like really making sure I was coming in and out of the anchors and not, going to get launched off the mountain. But I could hear the wind, these 50-mile-an-hour gusts come up over the ridge, and I would just hunker down. It'd go over me, and I'd stand up, take another step.
Mm-hmm.
And this entire time, I'd never felt alone. I just felt this presence. I didn't think about it, but it's like you two are in a room right now. If you close your eyes and don't say anything, you'll still feel that presence of each other. It was just that, I don't know, I didn't think about it. It was there the entire time. It just brought this kind of peace in a very chaotic moment. I eventually got to Hillary Step, the top of it, and I reversed my gear and started trying to rappel down and slipped out and just pendulumed, hit the rock wall and just slid all the way the 40 feet down. I remember laying
Man.
on this ice shelf below it and just assessing my damage. Like, am I broken?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I'm good. Worried like, were my crampons, did I cut myself or anything? But I don't know. I don't have any scars, so no. But
So you're, yeah.
it's kind of those moments. And then the next major obstacle is the Cornice Traverse, that 2-mile drop. So knowing that, and I could hear and feel the 50-mile-an-hour gusts, and I was just slow and deliberate, gaining purchase with my spikes, and I would just hunker down, and it was just taking forever. And got to the other side of that, and all of this, I had to stop, like get water. I was just like so just dehydrated. So it was taking a long time. Eventually climbed up the south summit, which which is nice, I guess, because if you fall upward now instead of down. Got to the other, got to the top of that, and then took a step and just heard a pop, and one of my crampons popped off.
Oh,
Oh,
And you
man.
cannot get down without your spikes.
You've got to have them for stability to, yeah,
yeah.
to navigate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's no way you just slip and go. So I remember, like, crap, I step with my crampon foot because I'm gonna go search for it. Step with my non-crampon, and I just slipped out. And this is the scariest thing I've ever experienced. It's like go to your roof, close your eyes, and jump. Just so helpless. I'm head over heels, just tumbling. The rope that I was attached to shock loads, and if it didn't, I would have fallen for over a mile.
Yeah.
I'm upside down, mask ripped from my face, my oxygen bottle's coming out. It took everything I had to just right myself. And my heart is literally just ripping out of my chest.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
just find that calm. And again, just felt this presence around me. Um, didn't think about it, calmed myself down, and I saw this blur above me. And I remember like trying to climb and just slipping backwards and eventually got to it. And it was my crampon.
Man,
Mm.
And
what a
I
blessing
put
you
that
found
on,
it.
a miracle. I torque it on, I torqued the other one on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking I need to side traverse over to get to the rock area and try to like rappel down to like the ridge. And one step, the side of the earth at that angle just slips out a slab avalanche, which is very common. It's where a heavier grouping of snow is on a lighter one. And as soon as it got hot out, just broke loose, my weight on it. And I remember immediately understanding I'm falling. I accelerated so fast. I grabbed the rope with my leather gloves. It burnt a line through my gloves. Like that's how fast I
Through
was
the
going.
leather. Wow.
Yeah. But I stopped myself. And again, just from that, my heart is just racing and calmed myself down, got over to where, rappelled down to where Pasong had turned back and almost walked right past the oxygen bottle he had left. Like I wasn't really even thinking I'd probably be out. But it was just like this bright orange thing. I was like, oh yeah. I lay down next to it, fumble around with my regulator, can't see anything. And the bottle just, it didn't work for whatever reason, just didn't work. So I put my bottle back together and for whatever reason, I don't know why, I put that extra 15 pounds in my pack.
Hmm.
I didn't want to leave it there and continued moving just slowly, slowly and like getting frustrated, still felt that presence, but even any like thought of frustration would just, I could feel my heart race and just everything that causes panic. And I had to suppress that, remain calm. Got to the balcony. This is hours. You got to imagine this is taking hours. Got to the balcony, the 27,500 feet where Pasong was supposed to be. And he wasn't there. I called for him.
Hmm.
I just assumed he must have went down, and it's which is fine. He was sick. He needed to, everyone's in survival mode. But I remember being happy at this point too. Like I got through like the technical section. This now it's just like 20 pitches of rappel. Like I can do this.
So you're feeling a little bit of hope at this point.
Yeah.
And then,
Eh,
Brian, you've
Yeah.
referred to a few times now this presence. I know you were really focused on getting down the mountain, but did you stop to reflect? Did you know what that presence was at that time, or did that come later on reflection after you got down?
Yeah, it was later.
Okay, we'll talk about that, but keep going.
So at this point, I reverse my gear and just start rappelling just slowly down these 20 pitches. And I don't know, it's 15, 20 yards into it. My mask just ripped, it just sucks into my face. So I ran out of oxygen. And typically, if you run out of oxygen on Everest in the death zone, it's game over. Like you're not going to survive. And at this point, I'd been climbing for 33 hours from the day prior to this point, completely blind. Now I'm out of air. And at that point, I dropped to my knees and I surrendered. And I just said, God, I cannot do this alone. Please help me. And what's just, it blows me away, but around the world, people were praying for me in that very moment. It's middle of the night for my wife. She wakes up and just, I need to pray. My best friend, people I didn't even know, they reached out later. It's like, I don't know what you were doing at this point, but I felt I needed to pray for you. And as soon as
Wow.
I said that prayer, it was like someone lifted me up, grabbed the back of my down suit, and I was on my feet and I had life. And the first thing I did was fumbled around for that extra oxygen bottle, tried my regulator, and I got a positive flow. And I remember taking
Wow.
5 just deep breaths and it burned. It tangibly, like physically burned. It feels like fire entering my veins. And I'd never experienced anything like that. I'm actually tingling right now thinking about
Yeah.
it. And again, without overthinking it, I put all my gear back and I just start rappelling down, coming in and out of anchor points, and eventually stumble in the last quarter mile, this ice bulge, and just trying to find my way. It's so bright and painful. And then out of nowhere, Pasang just hugs me. I never saw him coming. He's like, Brian, you alive?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm so sorry I leave you. And I remember just going, don't
Wow.
worry about it, dude.
Yeah.
I'm pretty chill. And
Yeah, yeah. Just a little
he helped
blind.
me back
Yeah.
to the tent. I collapsed in there, threw him my camera. He's checking out pictures from the summit. And I pretty much passed out for 15 hours.
Wow.
My eyes were completely swollen and glued shut from secretion.
Yeah.
I got some pretty gnarly pictures of it, but I still had to get down the mountain. I was still up in the death zone. I still in 26,000 feet. So it
Yeah.
still took a couple days to get down. Almost walked into an open crevasse. Someone grabbed my hand.
Oh man.
But I got down. Just a miracle. Just blessed to be here.
Wow. A miracle is absolutely, that is the one word that summarizes this whole thing. Man, that's
I don't even
crazy.
have words for it. I mean, I obviously I read about it in the book, but hearing about it, it's just I'm just trying to picture myself in those shoes, if that's even possible. And every time you say something, it's like, oh, it can't get worse than that. And then it gets worse
And
than
it
that.
gets,
And then it
yeah.
gets worse. And, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, to sit in that and to be calm in that is, I just don't know if that's something you would attribute more towards that was an environment you've been in, maybe obviously not that extreme, or maybe that extreme with your time in the Navy, maybe even going back to childhood, depending on, the experiences that you had, but you being in chaos a lot and having to navigate your emotions in it, would you attribute that as a large part of what enabled you to remain calm as in like an initial reaction? Or was it this presence you think that was kind of overcoming more of that?
Yeah, no, I'd say all of the above. I mean, I was definitely trained to remain calm in the chaos and never panic. Panic kills.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start wondering, am I going to die? You're already dead. So anything that entered my mind, I pushed it aside. I don't think I would have necessarily been there if I didn't have all that training.
Hmm.
And then to have the ability to survive it, I think it's a blend. I mean, but ultimately, the lesson I've learned, because you get done with something like that and you realize there's over 200 bodies still on the mountain, they're still up there. You have survivor's guilt. It's something
Mm-hmm.
carried over from the military as well. Okay, why is that person not here and I am?
Yeah.
We're both flying in helicopters. Why did his crash and mine didn't? Um, for me, it's in my talks, I'll talk about faith and focus because I had to focus, which is ironic because I couldn't focus. I couldn't see anything, but I knew what it took to get down the mountain. I had to find a reason to survive, a reason to take one more step. And then the faith piece is huge because my whole life I've tried to do it on my own. And I think Jesus was walking alongside me the whole time, hand out, keep trying, dummy. You got this. Like you'll
Come
come
on,
around.
keep going.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like, stop trying to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Man,
It's
now
okay.
that,
Rely on God.
oh man, that is the greatest life advice right there. I mean, for you, I mean, obviously you experience this on Mount Everest, but all of us experience a different version of this every day in our lives. And,
Yeah.
there's no one that's immune to that.
Oh yeah.
And, I think the lesson of stop trying it on your own, dummy, right?
Yeah.
Is so, it's so true. Just my wife always says, let go and let God. She always says that. So
Yeah.
it's so
Stop
simple.
playing God.
Yeah. Was that one of the key moments? Obviously, it was a key moment reflecting back on it. But were there any other moments that you had that little lesson of stop of cutting yourself from being so self-reliant, where you had to just surrender and give up? Was that the only moment you come to when you kind of reflect back, or are there other moments that where you're like, I learned that lesson here again? He gave me a nudge and retaught the lesson.
Yeah. I don't recall any. I mean, that definitely overshadows on the mountain itself.
Sure.
But through life, yeah, absolutely. It's easy just to get back into your normal life, be back at sea level. And I got this. And it's like,
Right.
whoa, hold the brain. You
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, it's so true. It's almost like it reminds what we're talking about a lot today reminds me of some conversations I've had with people at my church because we have several people at our church that are in a group called Celebrate Recovery, and they're most of
Hmm.
them, a lot of them are recovering addicts from one substance abuse and or another. And the conversations I've had with them, and at our church, I get a lot of conversations with them because every Sunday we literally have a potluck. It's like everybody brings something after the church service. We just all hang out for an hour, sometimes hour and a half, and we just talk. We just have what you call fellowship or whatever. And a lot of times they tell me the same thing. And what they tell me is that, it's almost like an addiction to chaos, the way they were brought up, and there's comfort in chaos to them. And a lot of people that have substance abuse issues and, that's, they find solace in that,
Mm-hmm.
they find again, comfort in it. And it's interesting. It just reminds me of what we've talked about today.
Hmm.
Yeah. Does that resonate at all with you and your path? I mean, obviously we've been talking about you living in chaos. So,
Yeah.
but when you hear about that, I mean, does anyone else in your journey, you talk about people coming up to you after speaking events and resonating with your story and kind of opening up, and what parts of their stories connect? Is it them living in chaos and trying to work through it, or is there a certain element to your story that connect with them most?
It's interesting, yeah, because everyone will always say, well, it doesn't compare, or, I haven't climbed Everest. I'm like, that's fine. What mountain have you climbed?
Yeah.
Right.
Clearly, you're here for a reason. So once we can get past that, and then we can both be vulnerable, it's unique. I mean, it's across the board, and it's interesting even on, like we mentioned earlier, or maybe we did before we started recording, but I'm a partner with YouVersion Bible app,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and I've given, the daily, message verse of the day. And I'll have like hundreds of people reaching out and just sharing their stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how many people want to share their stories and aren't? So I'm grateful for the ones that are, but I'm praying for the ones that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
wish, because they're holding on to that. And when you have that many people reaching out, there's not there's not a single there's a common denominator of, yeah, trying to do it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but it could be dealing with illness, could be dealing with abuse, could be dealing, anything, finances, job. Is so much, trauma from their family of origin or whatever. There's just so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess to answer your question is, yeah, there's no true like commonality other than everyone's dealing with it.
Yeah. So true. Everybody's dealing with something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And speaking of that, I mean, I've heard you talk about this before about, sitting with God and trying to have Him lead directions, decisions you're looking to make, whether it be to climb Everest or to take on these big adventures, or maybe it's even something small. Can you unpack what that actually looks like? How you discern that direction that you're getting? Is it a feeling, an inclination? If you feel like I need to make a decision A or B, you sit with God in it, and how do you come to that answer? What does it feel like?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think it's, we probably all struggle with that because
Mm-hmm.
we're looking for peace. We're looking for, give me a sign. It's like, oh, someone just honked their horn outside. Thank you. Okay. No, someone just honked their horn. Or was it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're all trying to determine what
Right.
what is God saying. It's changed a lot for me because at first it's like pray about it, do it anyways. And I think my prayer has just changed over time. It's like, it's your will, Lord. If this isn't your will, I trust in you. And I may not like the outcome. In fact, in a lot of cases, I probably won't, because it's my choice and I know it's not your choice. So just, God, please lead me and give me the courage to just be still and listen. Like this morning, I was doing the Bible in a year, I told you guys, and
Yeah.
I pray afterward. And this morning, I just said nothing for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like can't even be still for 10 seconds, and that's
Yeah.
just how our lives are.
Yeah.
Uh, no, it's probably longer, but and it's just in those moments, nothing came to me, but I was at peace that entire time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And maybe that's what I needed, just to kind of like, okay, now you can start your day.
Yeah. It's funny when you say that, not being able to sit in silence, whether it just be sitting in silence during the day or whether it just be sitting in silence in presence of your faith or in any other element. It reminds me of a book I read called Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools, I think I don't know if you're familiar with that book. Have you
I
ever
don't
heard
know
of
that
that?
one.
I think
Mm-mm.
Tyler Stanton, I want to say, is the author. Maybe don't quote me on that. But there was a piece that I took from that, which was the practice of just sitting in his presence, not asking, not talking, not trying to get something out of it, not just shutting your mind off and just allowing you to sit and bringing in the Holy Spirit. It's such a hard practice because, like you said, 10 seconds. For me, 10 seconds when I attempt that, it feels like a lifetime. But
Hmm.
if you try to expand that and grow, it was just a great practice that really helped me to slow down. Because anytime I'm in prayer or practicing the faith, my mind's just racing. It's always
Hmm.
going, and
Yeah.
I,
Same.
I feel like I gotta say something. It's gotta be worded the right way. And what if it sounds like this? Like, oh, and I find myself saying things talking in ways that I don't normally talk when I'm praying, but I'm like almost subconsciously just regurgitating things I've heard from other people
Yeah.
in prayers and like
Yeah.
trying to button things up when it's just the opposite approach.
Yeah.
So,
Some people are just so great in their prayer and their words. I'm not. Like,
yeah,
like Brian, can you pray for us? Okay. It's
yeah,
like I
I
pray
got
great in
5
my
words for
mind.
you.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes so I don't know if we've talked about this on our podcast before or not. But I start every day pretty much the same way. I get up at 5:45. The first hour is prayer time and Bible time. The second hour is generally fitness time. And then my work day and everything starts after that. So, um, I've been doing this for a long time, quite a few years. And I still struggle with that long silent time. But this conversation reminds me of an exercise that a Youth for Christ camp does. And one of the counselors one time told me what they do with the kids. They'll walk them through these certain exercises, and then there's this lake area. They go around, and each counselor has 2 or 3 kids with them, and they all go around the lake, so they're a ways from each other. No one can really see anyone, and they can't talk to each other, and it's really quiet because this camp is in the middle of nowhere. And they take their Bible with them, and they'll essentially sit there, and they have 3 hours of dead silent time. And the camp counselor's there to make sure no one talks. And so they have their Bible because the counselor tells them the only instruction you really have is, I want you to just sit in God's presence. And then if a Bible verse comes to you, if it comes to you and you feel compelled for a Bible verse, then go to that verse. And then when that's done, you shut your book, you shut the Bible, and then you go back in God's presence until you feel a strong compulsion to go to another verse.
yeah,
And it's literally, that's it. Those are the instructions. And they do that for 3 hours. So some people sit there and they'll sit there. The guy that runs the camp told me some kids will sit there for 2 hours, 2.5 hours before they even open their Bible.
yeah,
And most of them, he said it takes them a while for that to calm down. Like
yeah.
to get out of the world or get out of their mind. So I thought,
Yeah.
what an interesting exercise.
Yeah. That's a great exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Very
Well, it's like going
challenging
on
one.
vacation, right? It's like the first few days,
Yeah.
like it takes a while, and then it's like, okay,
Trying
because
to
your mind's
acclimate.
still working, and then by that time you're like, oh, I'm never going home.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
gotta go home.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And you go back to reality.
Yep. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Well,
So.
there's one last thing I wanted to kind of talk about before we wrap up, and maybe it's a bit of a bigger topic, but I'm always fascinated because I'm a newer dad. I've got a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, so I'm always curious of other parents out there to kind of pick their brains on things, and especially someone like you who, from podcasts and the book, just talked about how the challenges are of going on these adventures, setting examples for your kids to kind of to learn and to grow through, even though they may be very hard and difficult in the moments, like traveling for long periods of time and being away from your family. But the message that kind of brings, when you are in those situations, how do you navigate that balance of being present with your family and your kids, but also trying to pursue these goals and these aspirations that, one, you're kind of wired and driven to do, but two, that also works in a way that serves your family and your kids as an example. What does that management look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that can be a major barrier to the success of a family, marriage, fatherhood, motherhood. And I've seen it. I've seen it both ways. I mean, even the military, I mean, you leave for 6 months at a time. I mean, it's so hard. Um, and it's like, are you choosing that? Well, you chose that job, but it's for me, mountaineering, am I choosing that? Yeah, that is a choice. Um, the difference is I'm very present when I'm home and I involve my family. I've had them come down Argentina when I got down from climbing the highest peak in the Southern Hemisphere. We stayed down there for a week, went to an orphanage, and just having those experiences. They flew to Australia with me when I finished the project, climbed the highest peak together, all of us on Mount Kosciuszko when they were like 5 and 8 or something. They were young. Um, but even when I'm gone, like I put together, and I know this is unique to my situation, but it's just the thought of it. I always did scavenger hunts. So for like a week expedition, it's a lot easier than Everest, like 2 months. But I'm hiding notes and gifts and even a trip and like just different things every day. And then I had clues, and I had a buddy who would text my wife, and then the kids would get together and they go run and find whatever. So it
That's
just kind of brought
cool.
us
Yeah.
together, and yeah, so very memorable for them. But in the end, it's not without impacting them. There's a level of abandonment, and I'm fortunate that I did come back and I had a survival situation, and everyone loves a survival story. They don't really care about the survivor not dealing, what they're dealing with or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, blame them for the getting in the situation in the first place. See, Bella.
I
Yeah,
see
I
you
was
in
gonna
the
say, yep, yep, yep.
background.
Um, but yeah, I think it's being present, and it's focusing on them, getting them involved. Um, because if you are wired a certain way and now you just shift that way, and it's like these kids are my family's in the way of what I want to do. I mean, you shouldn't be in that situation in the first place. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't deserve to be a father or a husband. I mean, it truly is, and the same for them. And that's why I love having Joanna speak with me. And she co-wrote Calm in the Chaos with me to give her, Christian counseling perspective of everything I was talking about from the military, because she understands how I'm wired. She and I were dating when I was jumping out of helicopters. She's not trying to change me, but I'm also not trying to be that single person that I was. So I don't call it compromise. Some people call that you're losing if you're compromising. Well, I think
Mm-hmm.
you're winning because you're meeting each other where you're at. You're respecting what each other needs, how God created you, and you'll just have a much healthier relationship, a lot more fulfilled. And my kids, their resume of adventure is better than most adults will ever have.
Right, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Just
can
doing
imagine.
amazing things. But at the same time, I know I am me. I never expect anyone to be me.
Mm.
So I'm not the type that push them beyond their limits. I may push to see what their limits are,
Mm-hmm.
but not at the point of traumatizing them. I want things to be a good experience, build some grit, but at the end of the day, have fun together, make great memories together, so that my relationship, which is I'm an empty nester now, and I had texts and calls coming from both of them while we've been talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had
Yeah,
a strong relationship, and that's all I can ask.
That's amazing.
yeah. That's well. I have a question. If I can build on that real quick, it just, I mean, have your children ever verbalized to you, or have you ever talked to them in any in-depth conversation about what your adventures, what kind of example that set for them, and maybe in turn what it's done to their lives or what it's propelled them to do or not do?
Yeah, we're definitely transparent. Early on, we were more protective because they were young, and kids are cruel,
Hmm.
So I'd be on stage, I'd be on, on with Anderson Cooper, so I'd be on, the news. So they were sort of aware. Their friends or their friends' parents, because they were so young, were very aware, and then tell their kids, and their kids would tell my kids, "Oh, your dad almost died," and all that. And like, "Dad, did you almost die?" And then when I'd give talks, when it got to like serious stuff, Joanna would take them out, and
Yeah.
I'd tell my story. They're older now, so we can, definitely share about that. But yeah, you can see in their lives just the things they're doing. Like my son's heading out to go camping. He'll just go solo camping and stuff. He's at, Grand Canyon University, so it's the weekend going camping.
Yeah.
Yep.
Emily, yeah, she was 19, I think, when the Ukraine conflict with
Mm.
Russia started
Hmm.
happening, and she was in, she might have been her first year in college, second year of college. She says, I've been praying about it, and I feel I need to go to Poland to pray for the Ukrainians that are going
Wow.
across the border. And I'm thinking, the hell you are.
Like, no, you're not.
Hold up. Hold up
And then I'm
here.
thinking, okay, what was I doing at her age?
Yeah.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
forward deployed. I was, definitely in harm's way. And it's like, okay, it's one of those like God's telling me to do this, and then you say, well, God's telling me not for
Hmm.
you to do,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so anyway, she went, and
Yeah.
it was amazing experience, and she's praying, and you don't come back from something like that different or the same as you go into it.
Yeah.
And that can be good or bad. It's how you deal with that trauma and seeing it firsthand, but it's something she needed to see and do.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
she's, yeah. So both, yeah, I think
Man.
that was probably a yes or no answer, and I just say yes.
No,
Yeah.
that's cool. Well, maybe God's preparing Emily just like He prepared you all those years for your solo on Everest, because obviously He prepared you through the Navy and all the other things you had gone through, and He knew it the whole time. So He knew
Yeah.
what He was doing. We just don't sometimes. We
Yeah.
question Him.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
anyways,
Okay. I got one more question. I said the last one, but what I do want to ask is when now that you've gone through fatherhood, parenthood, you've had kids, and you talked about the upbringing that you had, and maybe the lessons that you've learned and had to process through that 40-year period you talked about. When you compare, or have you, I guess, ever sat with what your upbringing looked like, the family unit, and what you've created for your family, the differences, the things that you've learned, the things that you carried with you that were good, the things that you had, the baggage that maybe you had to process and work through. I mean, when you look at your family unit versus what you grew up in, what are those differences? What are those similarities? And how does it make you feel comparing the two?
Yeah, it's so my wife and I both came from like trauma, and so us coming together, and we are completely opposite. So in fact, we saw a counselor when we were dating in the 90s, and she said, just get up, turn away, don't ever look back.
Really?
That's great
Wow.
counseling. So I'm like,
whoa,
Oh,
challenge,
geez.
yeah,
challenge accepted.
Challenge, yep.
But we make it work, and because we respect each other, and we know our differences, and we honor that. And we always, you have the pyramid. I'm going off tangent, but
Hmm.
when you're focused on each other or yourself, you're always going to lose. But when you put God as at the center, put Christ, then you're working towards the common goal.
yeah,
And it doesn't matter how far off you get from each other, you're both working towards that. So you're kind of in lockstep. But for our families, because we came, from what we came from, we are very intentional of breaking those cycles, um, having structured boundaries, enforcing them with family members. Um, and with that, you can protect too much. So we
Mhm.
probably sheltered more than we needed to, but in certain ways. So we're always going to make mistakes. You think you're doing it right,
Yeah,
and it's any pendulum swings one way and then it goes way the other way. So it
Sure.
takes a while
yeah,
for it to actually like kind of balance out in the middle. Um, so it's not like we stripped everything from what we had learned there was adventure and grit and different things. We just taught it because those things are important. It's kind of like as we get older, our bodies start shutting down to where we can't do things like we used to. It doesn't mean you stop adventure. It just adventure looks different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Adventure looks different. Yeah. I like that. Well,
Anything else, Austin?
I think that's it, man. Brian, you've been super open and honest and unpacking everything. The story's incredible. Your book's amazing. I know you've got multiple books. I'm going to have to undive as well. But I really do appreciate you sitting down with us and kind of going through everything and letting us pick your brain on top of it. If there's any listeners, audience members, they want to follow along with your journey, check out your books, speaking events, anything like that, where can we direct them to?
Just Google me, Brian Dickinson. I have a website and everything.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, that's simple.
Great.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes as well so people can jump to it and check it out. But Brian, again, thank you for having us, or rather, thank you for being on and letting us pick your brain, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is great. I love what you guys are doing. Keep doing it.
We're going to keep going. And again, thanks for sharing, Brian. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously. Means a lot.